First of all, Good Yom Tov. Today we say Good Yom Tov. The 10th of Kislev on the Chassidic calendar is a very, very special day. I have my Rebbe board to explain what's the holiday today. This is the holiday of the second Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe. We study the Tanya every week. That's the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad. He had a son whose name was Rabbi Dov Ber. He's called the Mittler Rebbe, which means the middle Rebbe. Why was he called the middle? Because there was three Rebbes that lived in very close proximity. When the Alter Rebbe passed away, his son took over, but his son was only Rebbe for 14 years. He passed away young. And then his son-in-law became the Rebbe. So how do they refer? They used to say he's the old Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe. And then they used to call the Rebbe before that, he was the Mittler, he was the middle Rebbe. Because, of the three, he was the middle, this was just the Rebbe. And then when he passed away, he got the name Tzaddik after his books. Anyway, there's the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe doesn't get so much attention because every Chabad Rebbe has one day that's his birthday, another day is his Yartzeit, another day he was freed from prison. 3 days throughout the year, you keep up hearing about his life. With the Mittler Rebbe, all 3 days come in right one after another. His birthday and his Yartzeit are on the same day. Yesterday he was born and passed away. And today, the 10th of Kislev, was the day that he was liberated also. He was imprisoned on false charges for spreading Judaism. It was a whole story. And today he was liberated. So you basically get like 48 hours to talk about the Mittler Rebbe all year, and then you don't hear about him until the next year. So that's why people don't know that much about him.
And no picture.
And there's no picture of him. That's true. He's one of the two that we don't have a picture of. And there's a reason for that. He was super, super secluded. He almost never liked to be in the public eye and make big fanfare.
When they arrested him, did he take pictures?
No. Why? Interesting thing. He did not go into an actual jail for arrest. Because his father, the Alter Rebbe, was considered an honorary citizen after his liberation, so they only put his son under house arrest. That was the maximum they were allowed to do. So they didn't do the traditional mugshot and that whole thing. So we don't have any picture of him. And it matches his personality. His son-in-law said, that Tzaddik Chassidic, the third Rebbe, said, my father-in-law was so connected to Chassidus that if you would cut his finger, blood wouldn't come out, Chassidus would come out. In other words, that's how much it was a part of him. He would say Chassidus, a typical Rebbe would say a discourse, a mimer, a teaching on a Shabbos or on a holiday. It would go for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. When the Mittler Rebbe said Chassidus, everybody knew it was a minimum 2-4 hours. There was one Lag BaOmer where he said Chassidus for 18 hours straight. They just braked for prayers. They stopped to daven, because they were going to miss sunset. But other than that, he just kept on talking and talking. He was a fountain. He was a fountain of Chassidus. And he was in that way, very removed from the world. And that's part of why there's no picture of him. But he represents the attachment in a very, very deep way to Chassidus. And tonight, we're studying the Tanya, which is his father's work, but I think, again, everything is arranged by Hashgacha Pratis, by divine providence. There is a theme in the part of the chapter we're studying tonight that very much relates to what it was that the Mittler Rebbe wanted his followers to know. Because every Rebbe had a unique theme that they embodied. And the Mittler Rebbe embodied this deep, deep connection to the teachings and the philosophy of Chassidus, and I think it's reflected in the part of the chapter that we're studying tonight. What are we studying tonight? There's a piece of Talmud that I'm going to start with. And it's actually the piece of Talmud that the entire Tanya starts with. The Talmud describes the experience of a fetus in utero. What is the baby doing when it's developing in the mother's womb? And as the Talmud typically does when it conveys secrets of the Torah, it speaks in metaphor. And it says like this: the fetus sits folded over, its head between its knees, its heels attached to its bottom. A lamp shines above its head, and it is taught the entire Torah. And just before it emerges to the world, the soul is made to take an oath. The heavenly court administers an oath to the soul, and they say, Tihi tzaddik ve'al tihi rasha. Be a tzaddik and do not be a rasha. That's the statement. And there's a lot of commentary on the meaning of this statement. Of course, physiologically speaking, the description of the Talmud is pretty accurate. That's how the fetus is folded into itself. But spiritually, it represents that the brain is not yet fully developed. Head between its knees. You see, in Kabbalah, we divide the body in three. There's three kingdoms. The kingdom of the mind, the kingdom of the heart, and then the kingdom of the feet, which is the kingdom of action. Typically, as adult, grown people, how do we walk? We walk upright, right? The mind is on top of the heart, which is on top of the action, which means that's how it's supposed to be. The mind is supposed to dictate how we feel, which then dictates how we act. Animals, they walk level. The head is not raised above the heart because they act instinctively, impulsively. They don't have that natural control of the intelligence over the emotions. But a human being is supposed to operate in that way. Before you're born, it's still forming. So the head and the knees are attached in the sense that you're still coming out. The mind, the soul, hasn't yet fully developed, which, by the way, is exactly why the Talmud continues and says a lamp is above its head. There's no lamp, obviously, in the womb. We're not talking about a physical lamp. The lamp is the soul. King Solomon says, Ner Hashem nishmat Adam. The soul of man is the candle of God. Candle is a metaphor for the soul. But unlike our soul, which resides within us, the fetus's soul is still transcendent. It's above the head. It's removed. It hasn't yet entered, invested itself in this particular fetus till the time of birth. While the fetus is developing, we teach it the entire Torah. Which is a little funny, because the Talmud then says that when the fetus exits the womb, the angel gives it a little flick or a little slap, and then it forgets the entire Torah. So what's the point? What's the point of teaching the Torah if you're going to forget it afterwards?
So you can remember it.
Oh.
You have it somewhere.
Exactly. You ever have, today it's already the cloud, but if you remember the days of hard drives, there used to be that time when you by mistake click delete the hard drive, right? And you thought you lost all your files. Then you go to the recovery, and they find it somewhere, right? Because it was just compressed into the kilobytes, but if you then expand it, you can get it and recreate the files. So the same thing is for the soul. There's a massive difference between achieving something completely from new or re-exercising a muscle, even if you've completely forgotten it. There's something about muscle memory that makes you feel at home. So the fetus is taught the entire Torah, even though it's made to forget it because we want the soul to achieve it on its own. We don't want you to have just the gift. Gift sounds nice, but at the end of the day, nobody likes unachieved work. We like what we produce with the work of our hands. So we do a mix. We teach it the Torah, and then we make it forget, but when you come back, it feels like you're at home. We all have that visceral experience at one point or another. Maybe we come to shul, maybe we come to a Jewish ceremony, and we're like, wow, I've never done this, but it feels right. Huh? Yeah, like a deja vu. And what is that deja vu? That is the soul re-experiencing something that you experienced on your way into the world. Or you learn a piece of Torah or an idea and it resonates with you and you go, I've learned that somewhere before, but you actually haven't. There was no class that you attended that someone said this concept, but there was a class because that class was when the fetus was inside the womb. So the Torah teaching is essentially this preparation for the divine mission which we're supposed to carry out to kind of make it feel like you're going to be ready for it when it's time. And that ties right into the final stage, the oath. How do you say oath in Hebrew? The Hebrew word for swearing is shvuah. Mashbi'in oto, that was literally the first words of the Tanya. In chapter 1, he quotes the Talmud, he says, Mashbi'in oto, they make the soul swear, be a tzaddik, don't be a rasha. But in Hebrew, everything is rich, everything is precise. You know how there's a letter shin and a letter sin? The dot on the right side makes it a shin, dot on the left side makes it a sin. Take the word mashbi'in, reading it with a shin, move the dot to the left, and now it reads masbi'in. Masbi'in means satiated. Sova. V'achalta v'savata. Right, when we do the after blessing, what do we say? You eat and you're full, and then you bless Hashem. Satiation. The oath is a satiation of power to the soul to be able to do what it needs to do. It's the moment of empowerment. You send your kid out to do something, or to go to overnight camp, or some place where they're going to have to be on their own. You need to send them off with the encouragement and the power and the fortitude to make it through. They always remember that moment. The soul has that moment. The moment before it comes out, when the court says, hey, swear you're going to be a tzaddik and not a rasha, in that moment it's being empowered with all the strength it needs to do that, to fulfill its divine mission. And here we come to the end of chapter 14. We skip now 14 chapters because the Alter Rebbe asked the question. He didn't really ask it in chapter 1, it was alluded to. Everything, again, I repeat, in Torah is precise. Be a tzaddik, don't be a rasha. Sounds redundant. Sounds like you're saying the same thing. Be righteous, don't be wicked. Wicked and righteous are opposite. So if you're going to be righteous, you're already not wicked. If you're not wicked, you're already righteous, seemingly. So what's the double expression of the oath? If you're a Tanya student, the answer is pretty obvious by now. It's not a two-sided game. There's the Beinoni. Tzaddik and rasha are not the two sides of the same coin. They're actually two extremes of the human possibility. The tzaddik is the one that's literally divine. He's beyond the struggles and the battles of this world. The rasha is the person who is not only engaged with the battle, but compromised in the battle. He's weak, he's given in, he's in the pit. Then you have the Beinoni in the middle. The Beinoni in the middle, he's not a rasha, not a tzaddik. He's not a rasha in the sense that he wins every battle. Every time. Action, speech, thought, he's always in control. But he's not a tzaddik because he's still living the battle, which the tzaddik is not. So if you think about it from a tzaddik's perspective, let's just say for a moment, he's done two things. A tzaddik in his life has A, not been a rasha. He's removed himself from the weakness of losing the battle. But then he's also climbed up the ladder to become an actual tzaddik. It's two steps. It's not two sides of the same coin. You speak conventionally, of course. You speak the regular definitions of tzaddik and rasha, fine. 51% good, 51% bad. You're either a tzaddik or a rasha, then it's the same thing. But on the deeper level, it's two different things. And the soul is made to take both oaths. The second part of the oath is our obligation. It's our obligation not to be a rasha. That part is within reach. It's practical. It's real. It sounds crazy, but at least for a moment, strive to be there 5 minutes to 5 minutes, entering a zone where you're in complete control of everything that's going on. The first part of the oath, that's a little bit harder. Not only is it harder, it would seem like it's beyond us, right? We say that tzaddik is born a tzaddik. That was we ended off last class. Why did Eov say, Barata tzaddikim, you created tzaddikim, not because you create people without the battle of free choice, but you created souls that have the potential to be a tzaddik, and other souls don't have that potential. They have to struggle all their life. That's a different thing. So what does it mean that we tell a soul to be a tzaddik? So before we go there, notice that we've already refined the question. No longer the question is, what's the double expression? We know what the double expression is. Now we want to know, how do we actualize both sides of the oath? Not being a rasha, that I can understand. It's my free choice. I have the option. I can stay in control, not stay in control. I can give in, not give in. Fine. Maybe it takes a lifetime of work. Maybe there's tools for that, which we're all going to have in the Tanya, tools for how to not be a rasha, how to maintain the Beinoni status. But how do you tell a soul to be a tzaddik if it's not in potential? It's just not in the potential. It's like telling a 6-year-old, go learn advanced mathematics. It's not It's not within the realm of possibility at this point. So here the Alter Rebbe says something that I think is quite revolutionary. He says that a Benoni, a regular Jew, should try to create tzaddik moments in his life. We're just trying to create Benoni moments in our life. But he goes even further. He says, no, tihi tzaddik, that's the heavenly court's demand of every soul, that you actually do things to imitate a tzaddik. Now, how do you imitate a tzaddik? If you're barely keeping it together in your own self-control, how do we imitate a tzaddik? So here's what the Alter Rebbe says, or I'm going to paraphrase it the way I understand it. The hallmark of a tzaddik, see, when you don't struggle, what does a life without struggle look like?
You're coasting.
Huh?
You're coasting.
You're kind of coasting. That's how we feel, right? When we're not struggling, you always hear people say, life is good, it's just,
You don't have to pedal.
it's going, huh? Yeah,
You don't have to pedal.
exactly. It's working. But also, a life without struggle means that you have a certain crystallized perspective on things which won't even lead to a potential struggle. In other words, there's an attitude that you have in which you see things so clearly that it's not even a question whether or not you're going to engage in certain things. And that we all have. Granted, not to everything in life, but to certain things. Let me give you an extreme example. Is it even a question for you to dig into a garbage can and eat what's in there for a meal? No. Not for human beings. I understand there are certain people, once they reach a certain point, that becomes a level of desperation for them. But they'll also have their red lines, and we could talk to them. But for us around the table, thank God we're blessed with a regular economic fortune in our lives. It's not even a struggle. We don't have to struggle, oh, I feel like going into the garbage, but no, I'm not. I'm bigger than that. I'm stronger than that. That's not an urge we have to fight. And why is that not an urge that we have to fight? Because there's a natural, what's the word I'm looking for? Like repulsion. Yes, thank you. There's like a loathing. It's like you're just naturally repulsed from it. You don't have to do anything. You're programmed that way. Versus, let's say, an animal who does that is not. Food is always an easy way to go. I mean, same thing. Moldy food you wouldn't get close to. But there's also experiences that you wouldn't get close to. There are experiences, relationships, situations where we don't have to struggle with not going down these given paths simply because there's a natural, maybe it's a fear, but typically it's a repulsion, it's a great word, where we're just, by nature, we're just removed from it.
Like murdering someone.
There you go. There's a natural repulsion to murder.
It's not something that even...
It's not in the realm of possibility.
Right.
You have to struggle with it. I understand. There are people born with these tendencies and they have to deal with their own thing. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. For better or for worse. But of course, this is the point. Now, imagine you could do that to a regular breakfast. Imagine you could immediately see the truth of the food in front of you. By the way, when do relationships go sour? When do you, if let's say you're in a good space with somebody, or in a good space with something, okay? Let's call it, you're a young guy, everything is going good for you, so you can afford to have pizza and French fries and that stuff. Right? Then you meet another guy, he's later age, and he goes, nah, I can't, that's not for me. What happened that caused that relationship to move? Or you have guys that are friends with each other. There's a beautiful thing going between them. And all of a sudden, one day it explodes, it blows up, and that's it. They're not talking anymore. Typically, what happens? You've come to see something or someone for what they truly are. And when you reveal the truth of what someone or something is, contrary to what you used to think that thing was, that feeling of natural repulsion comes in. So you have a guy, and you're buddy-buddy with him since college, since school. And all of a sudden it comes out, God forbid, he's scamming people out of their money. Or he's in messed up familial types of things with other people. Now what happens? The true colors have been exposed. The true colors have been exposed as an immediate standoffishness. Or, let's keep it a little more parav, the pizza and french fries example. As long as you're young, you can afford to eat pizza and french fries. What do you care what's in it, what's not in it, if it's messing up your body or not? Then you go to the doctor one day and he starts showing you what's in the fries. Yeah? And giving you a close-up of what exactly it's doing to the system inside as you swallow it and digest it. All of a sudden you start seeing it a little differently. My teacher in 6th grade used to tell us, he grew up in Montreal, so they have a big meat production plant over there, one of the biggest in producing kosher meats. So he said that as a kid he loved hot dogs and he wanted to know how hot dogs are made. So his uncle was connected somewhere, so he went into the schlachtais, to the slaughterhouse, and he said, I watched one time what goes into making hot dogs, I can't eat it again. Since then, you can't eat it again. You get getting close to it. Now me, I eat hot dogs for a living. What's the difference? The difference is that when you get exposed to the thing that goes behind what you think is good and fun and pleasurable, sometimes you reveal that it's not so not so good for the body, not so good for the soul, not so good for your emotional or psychological well-being. Stay away from this guy, stay away from that thing, don't avoid these foods, etc., etc. A tzaddik, we have to understand, that's the outlook that he has to everything which is not godly. Or maybe better said, he can see the God in everything. Instead of making it a negative thing, we make it a positive thing. That's what he sees breakfast, all he sees is a medium to serving God better. So a medium to serving God better, what do you eat? You eat healthfully, you eat right, you don't eat like a glutton, you don't eat whenever you want, everything is in order. You don't eat excessively. Family, work. Doesn't say anywhere in the Talmud or in Kabbalistic literature that as a tzaddik you can't work. Many tzaddikim did work. They had to bring in the money to feed their family. But it wasn't work where your head was in the work. Your hand was in the work. You know what it says in Tehillim? Yigia kapecha ki tochal ashrecha v'tov lach. King David says, Psalm 128, if you eat the labor of your hands, fortunate are you and it's good for you. So the simple meaning is, everyone likes to produce on their own. Right? If you're just given gifts, at a certain point you don't like it. If you benefit from the work of your hands, you feel good. But Hasidism says deeper. The work of your hands. Proper attitude to work is that it has to be the work of your hands, not the work of your head. People get so involved in their business. All they're trying to do all day is think of new ways to make another dollar, and they completely lose track of the purpose. Why are we working? Where are we heading? What's the thing? Your hand has to be in the work, not the head. It's like the Chassidic story that Rabbi Weiss loves to repeat it in his sermons. There was a Chassid. Maybe it was the Mittler Rebbe actually from tonight's. No, it could be a different Rebbe. Anyway, he was in the kalashin business. Kalashin is like a type of boot. Kalashin, yeah, that they used to. It was very, very in Russian times of old. Very fancy. People wore these boots, and he was into manufacturing these boots. So one time he came to shul for prayers, and afterwards, the Rebbe or the Tzaddik who was leading the service, he came over to him, and he said, "I've heard of feet in Kalashin, but I never heard of a head in Kalashin." So he didn't understand what he meant. And basically he explained that in the prayer I could sense where your thoughts were. You were just trying to think of new ideas how to sell another pair of kalashin. So your head was in the kalashin. The boots are for feet, not for your head. So of course you go to work, of course you do what's necessary, but for a tzaddik, it's a completely different type. He sees the godliness in it. And anything, by the way, which doesn't serve a godly purpose, there's a natural repulsion to it. Stay away. Not because it's a struggle and he wins. The same way we would stay away from garbage. The same way we would stay away from somebody who we discover is not who we think they used to be. The tzaddik stays away from those things that are not serving a godly purpose. To the regular Jew, we say, Tihi tzaddik. Try to inculcate those types of moments into your routine. You won't succeed at it naturally. That's not how we're wired. We're wired to struggle. But maybe with meditation, consistent meditation, we could create certain things that we will treat with natural repulsion. We will not just seek the human pleasure and gratification in it, but instead find the deeper purpose. He quotes a very controversial piece of Talmud. I think even last time, like 3 years ago when we did this chapter, someone said, maybe we shouldn't quote it. But we should look at it because it communicates the point. If you have the book, look on the bottom of 175. Here, in this, credit to the commentary here, he doesn't try to spin it out of its context. He gives the literal meaning, but then I'm going to tell you a more deeper meaning that I once heard from my Tanya teacher when we were learning this chapter. So the bottom of 175. See, by nevertheless, 3 paragraphs from the end. The Alter Rebbe, this is where he tells us. He says, nevertheless, you ought to designate at least some time to seek advice for your soul, to develop a disgust for evil. It is not expected of you to despise evil consistently like a tzaddik, but you should do regular emotional work towards that goal. For example, to counter sexual temptation, our sages advised that at the moment an unwanted urge arises, 176, this is a quote from the Talmud, to look at a woman as a pouch full of feces, etc. That's harsh, right? And other similar ideas. Now listen, hold on. There's 2 steps. First is the literal meaning of this statement. What's the literal meaning here? So he brings the commentary, and this is the truth. This is a literal commentary of the Talmud. The mind game, we're going to read the commentary here. The mind game which this teaching plays is to supplant an image that the man finds attractive with one which is naturally repulsive to him. Logically, there is no reason why a man should find a woman attractive. It's a fascinating Torah concept. As Rashi comments on this passage, that male attraction to the female is an irrational divine decree. This is a big discussion. We can talk about this another time, one time. How Hashem made it. It's not a natural thing. Hashem made. Al kain yazov ish, it says in Genesis. Al kain yazov ish et aviv et imo v'davak be'ishto. A person will leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. That's a godly imposition on creation. Fascinating concept. Similarly, there is no logical reason why we should be particularly repulsed by feces. What is feces? A mixture of water, cellulose, and minerals. Right? I mean, if you distill it. Eh? But that is human nature. How Hashem made it. We're attracted to women and repulsed by feces. So therefore, if that's already the way your mind works, male attraction can easily be turned off by something he finds unattractive. Playing on this weakness, the sages suggested that when a man's sexual attraction is undesirably strong, he should imagine the woman's intestines full of the very same fecal substance that he finds naturally repulsive. Perhaps this change of perspective will burst the bubble of his excitement. So in no way is the Talmud equating a woman to the feces. It's telling you to supplant the image. That's the literal meaning. And by the way, this is a fact. Okay, we don't need a Tanya for this. We all know this. In a moment of urge, if you find an unattractive element, it will turn us off. That's how we're wired. Now, I heard something beautiful on this piece of Talmud. Okay, when I was a teenager studying Tanya. It goes even deeper than this concept. One of the things, and as a teen I couldn't appreciate this as much as I do now, but now that I'm older, married, there's a lot more angles to this. One of the things that women hate is when we stop seeing them for who they are and instead objectify them in some way. Whether it's complete objectification or momentary objectification, we stop appreciating them for their character and instead for whatever it is that they bring to us. Why is that so wrong? Because they're right? We shouldn't objectify women. We shouldn't even objectify the things or the parts of the relationship which they grant to us and just make that, what everything is about. Why is it so wrong when a man does that? Because what's happening is, esoterically, mystically speaking, what's happening is you're divorcing the inside, the truth, from the outside. And you're turning the external part of a person into their core. You're literally reducing everything about their soul, identity, consciousness to a mere body. What is a body? This everybody can agree on. What is a body in the end of the day? What does Torah say? Ki afar ata ve'el afar tashuv. From dust you came, and to dust you will return. Everybody knows when we talk and we have a relationship, what is it about us that's connecting? The bodies? No. The body is the vehicle. The body is the clothing. But it's the soul that's connecting. It's the identity that connects. It's the consciousness, the level on which we connect. And by the way, the minute we lose that is the minute that the value of the relationship goes down.
The Torah does recognize some beautiful women, right?
Of course.
Like Queen Esther or...
Yeah, absolutely. It's not taking away from them. So when the Talmud says that the advice to tame sexual attraction, unwanted sexual attraction, is to imagine the woman as a pouch full of feces, what's the Talmud saying? The Talmud is saying, if you are experiencing an unwanted sexual attraction and you're trying to find satisfaction or fulfillment in that, what you're doing is you're chasing a pouch full of feces. You're not chasing relationship. No relationship is going to be enriched through an extramarital affair. No relationship is going to be enriched through wrongful intimacy. It can't. It's such an act of bonding that has to happen within the right confines and context, that if it doesn't, you lose the soul. And so the Talmud is actually guiding us on how to look at proper and improper relationships. An improper relationship is by definition saying that the man is objectifying the woman. It has to be. Otherwise, why are you engaging in it? What's the craving here? You're looking for something outside that which is real. What's real is holy. What's holy is true. What's true is eternal. Not limited by finite or bodily things. And that itself, if we're mature, will bring down the heat, the urge, the lust. Because if we can stop ourselves in our tracks and say, 1 minute, is that who I am? I'm a person that's after the physical, material, mundane, and external parts of things? Or am I a person who searches for the truth and for the inside? Of course I'm a person that searches for the truth and the inside. I'm not. It's beneath me to be the kind of person who only digs for that which is outside. And this way we can become a tzaddik-like person. He gives another example of food, which I already mentioned before, that food, will become ultimately rot. I mean, that's what happens. You leave food out long enough, it's going to become garnished. These are little mini ways that you can seek to help bring your approach to things in the world to see them like a tzaddik sees them. Granted, not all day. Granted, not constantly. But in the moment, yes. And it's our obligation, therefore. Our soul was made to swear, to be tzaddik. Be that tzaddik. be, for a moment, that type of person who lives on a higher plane. But it doesn't diminish from the point that there's beauty and that there is appreciation for beauty. But even appreciation for beauty, why does that have to be attached to an unhealthy urge? We can all appreciate nature, yes? You go out to the field and you see beauty. It's actually one of the most beautiful feelings. You're overtaken by God's creation, by God's immense power, by God's infinity. Some of the most profound moments happen to people when they engage with nature at that level. So a beautiful woman can just go right into that category. There's no problem to appreciate beauty, so long as it's not linked with unhealthy urges. And if it is, then we have to protect ourselves from that. If we know that going down that path of letting our eyes wander on, not on God's nature, but on certain people, then yes, then that's something we have to guard our eyes from. Somehow, again, talking about natural wiring, we don't have that type of thing to nature. We see a beautiful tree, a beautiful landscape, a beautiful mountain, a beautiful hill. We say it's Hashem's creation, wonderful, beautiful. A tzaddik can do that to women. Yeah. And we should also be able to in certain ways. I'm not saying we should look there, you know what I mean? Let's start with the easier stuff, okay? Let's not start with the controversial stuff.
Let's start with French fries.
Let's start with French fries. Let's start with calming down the running to the food, you know? At the end of the chapter, the Alter Rebbe promises. He says, a person who puts in the work and tries to create these mini tzaddik moments, in whatever way, to create a natural repulsion to certain parts of the world that would otherwise be a struggle to engage with, he says, don't worry if it feels futile. Don't worry if it feels like you're working towards nothing. A, habit becomes second nature. Yes, you repeat something, it will become part of you. B, it's so the Alter Rebbe is so demanding practically and always talking about, how it plays out practically. Here he kind of rises a little bit. He says, B, maybe, where's the language here? Kulei hai ve'ulai. Kulei hai ve'ulai means maybe after all of your effort, Hashem will insert into your soul a spirit from a previous tzaddik's soul.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Which will allow you, it will allow you a limited experience of what they had. It's on page 178. You can see it in the bottom paragraph. Yeah. It's right there. He says, and if this happens, you will merit that the spirit of the soul root of a particular tzaddik will be impregnated into you, enabling you to genuinely worship God with joy, as the verse states that only tzaddikim are joyous with God. And yeah, he even gives the commentary. Look what he says. He says, soul impregnation, ibur, is a kind of reincarnation that takes place during your lifetime, where by divine decree a spark of a departed soul joins yours. When ibur occurs, top of 179, you become impregnated with a second dimension of spirit, often from a departed tzaddik. This enables you to acquire some of the departed tzaddik's qualities. And then, that's the last lines over there, and then you will have truly fulfilled the oath that you were made to swear before birth to be a tzaddik. Hashem might grant that to you, and you will actually be a tzaddik. In that, you will be invested or infused with the spirit of an actual tzaddik. Amazing. In 1947, my great-grandfather was in France. He escaped the war. There was the Great Escape in 1946. You can read about this, a fascinating piece of Chassidic history where many, many, many Chassidim were able to escape from Russia through Poland on fake Polish passports, and they made it out. And so he came to France with his family. Including in that Great Escape was the Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Tzimchana. And it was one of the few times that the Rebbe left New York. The Rebbe himself arrived in America in 1941. He never left New York City, except to go to his father-in-law's gravesite. But one of the only times that he left was in 1947. He went to France to bring his mother back to New York, to pick her up. And he spent 2-3 months there, a very rich part of Chassidic history in France. The Rebbe Farbring there, he lectured there. That's when Chassidim first began to appreciate his greatness, when they saw how he was leading everything over there. Anyway, when he came, everybody knew that he's very particular about his eating standards, kosher standards. So who was going to be the one to merit to cook for him? So it was my great-grandparents, my father's father's father and his wife, Rabbi Yankel and Taiba Lipsker. They cooked for the Rebbe. Yeah, he only ate from their food. Pesach, he was there for Pesach. They had to buy a whole new set of utensils, and they made homemade wine and the whole thing. The Rebbe ate from their food. So in the beginning, when the Rebbe first came, my grandfather said, I have to find out what the Rebbe likes to eat. We're not going to make a menu just based on what we like to eat. So he asked the Rebbe if he would tell him, what he prefers to make. The Rebbe didn't, I don't remember all the details, but the Rebbe said he should make fish consistently because souls of tzaddikim are reincarnated into fish. Yeah? That's what he said. It's a different kind of reincarnation. They don't reincarnate to fix.
Fish that get caught.
Huh?
That was good.
Yeah? Fish in Kabbalah, in Chassidic literature, they're considered to be the example of a tzaddik's equivalent in the animal kingdom because they live within their source of life. They know that they can't leave the water. They're so bound to it. We think, we don't, of course we also need oxygen, but we think we can be independent. The fish it lives in its source of life. You look at the sea, all you see is water, you don't see the fish. You have to look deeper to find the fish. So the tzaddik's soul is like that. He's walking on this earth, but he's just completely bound with Hashem. So this is, a soul incarnates into fish. You might be eating a tzaddik's soul, but the soul incarnates into you. You become a little bit of a tzaddik. You did the work, and Hashem puts it in. And this, I'm telling you, it's divine providence, but this is one of the biggest things that the Mittler Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, lived for. He said, it's my wish. He said this. It's my wish that when two young Chassidim meet, the topic of their conversation will be about Yichuda Ilah. Yichuda Ilah means the higher unity. In Kabbalah, we talk about two levels of God's oneness. We say God is one. There's a lower unity and a higher unity. The lower unity means you acknowledge the existence of the world, and it's fused with Hashem, from the bottom up. The higher unity means the whole world is a continuum of God's identity. It doesn't exist in the first place on its own. So one works from the outside in, one works from the inside out. So Yichuda Ilah is a very high level. It's where you don't see the world for an entity. You see it as just part of the wider consciousness of infinity. But he said, it's my wish that when Chassidim meet, the topic of the conversation, not the mortgage, not the stock market, not the food, not Yichuda Ilah. Meaning what? He wanted to live in that space. You ever meet a guy who's trying to make a sale? That's all he can talk about. Yeah. Even when he's sitting over breakfast talking about a sale, when he meets another guy, he's like, maybe you need something, maybe I can sell you a product. Their mind, that's where they're living. So it penetrates everything without them having to think about it. When you're a chassid living like that, it does the same thing. You're always selling chassidus. You meet another guy, you're not going to ignore dinner or ignore the relationship, but within that, you're always going to manage to squeeze in something. Because that's where, chapter 14, the tzaddik lives. That's where a chassid should live. A person who follows in the ways of chassidus or who learns chassidus should be overtaken with it to the point that it comes out at random. Everybody knows when you meet David, you're going to hear a chassidic vart. How do you know? What if I speak to him about organizing an event? It's going to happen because that's the way he lives. You meet a Chabad rabbi, they're going to ask you to put on tefillin. Why? What if we're meeting about something else? Doesn't matter. That's how they roll. So we have to have the same thing. We have to put it into our system, this concept, that yes, we don't live there necessarily, but we could slowly create these types of moments. And when we do, we truly fulfill that oath that we're beckoned to make, to hit tzaddik ve'al tihi rasha. We stay out of the rasha's pool, but we also rise to the level of being tzaddik-like, where we see the God in everything in the world. L'chaim.